With the departure of so many great defensive players, college football is on the hunt for the next top dog, the one who will keep offensive coordinators up at night. We'll sit down with Devonair D. Jackson to discuss the top defensive players coming in 2020. All this and more coming up next on Heisman Talk. Many would say that the quarterback is the most important position on the field. And last week, I sat down with Devonair D. Jackson to discuss the top offensive players in each conference. Well, this week, he joins me again as we talk about the top defensive players in each conference. D, thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me again, Nate.
Now, like I said before, we talked about the offensive MVPs of each conference last week. And this week, we're going to talk about the defensive players, the MVPs of each conference. You know, a lot of people will talk about the quarterbacks, the running backs, but not many safeties, defensive ends, and linebackers get talked about, especially in our first conference, the Big 12. You know, the Big 12 is known for the air raid offense, a lot of deep throws, not much defense. However, there are some guys that will make a push this year for not only MVP, but possibly a first or second round draft pick. D, who do you have as your defensive MVP for the Big 12?
Like you were saying, the Big 12 is not, really heralded for their defense. But, you have some good defenders in the Big 12 that kind of get overlooked. My defensive MVP for the Big 12 is Trayvon Merrick. He's, a phenomenal athlete. He's 6'2", 208 pounds. He was first team all Big 12 last year, and he was graded as Pro Football Focus's, number one safety last year. So I think he'll come back and be just as good, so.
Yeah, it's one of those teams for TCU that is kind of overlooked in the Big 12 when you think about the whole scheme of things in terms of offense. I would definitely agree with you. I personally went with linebacker Garrett Wallow, who's also from TCU. This is a guy that led the Big 12 with 125 tackles last season, made first team All-American, first team All-Big 12, and also led the team with 18 tackles for loss. He's got the ability to read plays and react quickly, and I think whether it's blitzing through the gap or dropping back in coverage, Wallow is always there to make a play. This kid is always making an impact. So watch out for the TCU defense. They've got a few other guys out there that could really make a push this year for the Big 12 defense of the year.
Agreed.
So then we move up north to the Big 10, also known for some of its quarterbacks, including Justin Fields, to name a few. However, I would say the Big 10 is pretty stacked when it comes to defensive players. Who do you have winning the Big 10 MVP?
Man, like you said, the Big 10, they have some, pretty good defensive players. I had to go with Penn State's linebacker, Micah Parsons. He was a top-rated linebacker, coming out of high school, and he's lived up to to the billing. And he's 6'3", 244 pounds. Big, strong athlete. Last year he had 109 total tackles and 5 sacks. And so, the guy is just a phenomenal athlete, and he's able to, find the ball through the traffic, and, he's just a phenomenal football player. So I went with Michael Parsons for the MVP of the Big Ten on defense.
Yeah, and most would say that he's probably going to be a first or second round pick.
Oh, yeah.
I went with defensive end George Karlaftis, also known as the Greek Freak. And the reason I call him the Greek Freak is because actually he is originally from Athens, Greece. Came over to America when he was in 8th grade and started playing football. Ended up becoming 6'4", 265 pounds. I'll tell you what, this kid is something else. As a true freshman last year, he recorded 7.5 sacks and collected 54 total tackles. When you look at him, you see a potential All-American this year, no doubt about it. Most people are saying that he is already a first-round pick when he gets out of college, and that's crazy to say considering he has still 2 years left of eligibility. He doesn't give up on any play. And, whether he's lining up in the 3-point stance or he's lined up on the edge, this guy can get it done either way. A lot of people would compare him to Ryan Kerrigan, who's also a Purdue grad. He's just an absolute playmaker. So look out for the Greek Freak this year. So then we move to the ACC. Obviously, Clemson has produced many defensive linemen, I would say, in the past couple years that have made a name for themselves in the NFL. But there's a few other players on other teams out there looking to make a push this year. Who's in the ACC?
So for my ACC defensive MVP, I had to go with Gregory Rousseau of Miami, defensive end. And when you watch this guy, man, you can just tell he's different. He's a big kid, a big athlete. He was, ranked as a top 15 athlete coming out of high school. And the dude is 6'7", 253 pounds. And that's a haul to block. Nobody wants to block that, But, he's just a super athlete. And he's, last year he had 15 and a half sacks. He had, 54 total tackles and 14 and a half, tackles for loss. And so, I had to go with Gregory Rousseau, man. He's a crazy good athlete, so.
Yeah, and Miami's a team that's down in the South looking to make a push in the ACC, along with some other teams, including North Carolina, with another team who I chose from, and that's Pittsburgh. And I chose defensive tackle Jalen Twyman. This is a guy that's flying completely under the radar right now. Obviously, he doesn't come from a very defensive team in terms of recruiting top 5-star players. However, we all know of Aaron Donald, who's in the NFL now. He actually wears the same number as Aaron Donald in 97, did at Pitt. Absolutely love this guy's swim moves. If Twyman gets a one-on-one matchup, which is mostly Pitt's defensive scheme, he's going to get to the quarterback. This is a guy that finished off last season with 41 tackles and 10 and a half sacks. He is an absolute monster and was also recognized as a second-team All-American. I expect him to honestly be a first-team All-American this year. I expect Twyman to get it done.
Agreed, man. Agreed. Yeah, this is definitely an under the radar player that a lot of people haven't heard of. And yeah, he's a phenomenal defensive lineman.
So then we head to the West Coast, D, one of your favorite places, the Pac-12. Again, the Pac-12 is usually known for its West Coast offense. Had a lot of players in the past decade come out of there, including Troy Polamalu and a few others. Who do you expect to make that jump this year in the Pac-12 to make some defense or some offensive coordinators stay up late at night?
Man, I think this one's easy. There's a guy in the Pac-12 that was a freshman last year, was a monster. His name is Kayvon Thibodeau. And, he was consensus, number one player last year coming out of high school in 2018. And so, Kayvon Thibodeau, he had 9.5 sacks last year as a true freshman. And so, he didn't start all the games. He started only half the games, and he had 35 tackles on the year. And the guy is, they line him up, on the edge. They send him blitzing like he's a linebacker. He's just so fast, and he's running down guys from sideline to sideline, and it's ridiculous. And, that's the first thing you see when you turn on the tape of him. And so, yeah, I went Kayvon Thibodeau for my defensive MVP in the Pac-12.
I think that's a great pick. Oregon, again, a team that won the Pac-12 last year, won the Rose Bowl. And, this is a team that's going to try to bounce back. I think they've had a few good recruiting classes. And so, yeah, I think that's a great pick. I went on the other side of the defense in the secondary with safety Elijah Molden from Washington. Expect this kid to be a first-round pick this next year. I tell you what, this ball-hawking safety is expected to be a first-team All-American this year as well. And he finished off last season with 79 tackles as a safety. Remember that. 4 interceptions and 17 pass defense. One thing that I love about this kid is his ability to consistently rip the ball out of the wide receiver's hands. You'll see the wide receiver make a catch, and next thing you know, he's either knocking it out for an incompletion, or he's not giving up and he's stripping that ball out for a fumble recovery. He high points the ball really well and has great tackling form for a defensive back, something that's hard to come across nowadays in today's college football. Like I said, I expect him to be one of the first names called next year in the draft, so be looking for him for sure. And then we head to one of the most dominant conferences in all of college football. And although people may say we're biased, I think most would agree that the SEC probably holds some of the best defensive players, if not the best defensive players in the nation. It seems like every year there's a new guy that steps up. Who's that guy this year, D?
That guy this year is none other than Dylan Moses. Dylan Moses was injured last year. He suffered a knee injury in camp last year. But he had a team high 86 tackles in 2018. The guy is, man, he's always been a phenomenal athlete. The guy, I think in order to play defense in the SEC and anywhere in Division I football, you have to be a pretty good athlete. But this guy is phenomenal. He gets sideline to sideline. He's a heat-seeking missile, man. It's awesome watching him. And I definitely would have to go Dylan Moses. He'll definitely be a first-round draft pick. He could have possibly been one, this past year, but he decided to come back, which shocked a lot of people. And I'm going Dylan Moses for my defensive MVP for the SEC this year.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, D. This is a guy, like you said, that got injured, wants to come back for his team, for his university, and bring back the championship to Tuscaloosa. And I'm going with their arch rivalry. I'm going with Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU, also known as DBU. This guy is one of the most disciplined defensive backs I have ever seen in my whole entire life. I remember you talking to me about him last week, D, and just his ability to high point the ball, to torque his body. It's unbelievable. You got to check this kid's tape out if you haven't yet. Like I said, he's got great ball skills. He's so good at getting his head turning around. A lot of corners grab and pull and get pass interference. This guy is stride for stride with some of the best wide receivers in the nation every single play. It's unbelievable. I've seen this guy stop and go on a dime and keep up with those guys. He's a defender that will definitely keep offensive coordinators up at night, and I expect him not only to be an All-American this next year as a true sophomore. By the way, he was a true freshman last year. I've seen people even predicting him to be a first-round pick as well in the top 10, not just first round, but top 10 as a true sophomore. Still got another year of eligibility after this, but look for Stingley to make a huge impact this year in the SEC.
Agreed, man. Agreed. He's like you were saying, me talking to you about him last week. That guy is one of the best corners I've ever seen. I've been watching football for a long time. I've played football, and that dude is absolutely phenomenal, man. His ability to high point the football and just, lock down receivers is amazing. So,
100%. It's gonna be a great year if college football holds out like we're supposed to, and the season starts on time. It should be a great year. Well, D, we really appreciate you joining us again today. Next week, when we come back, we're going to discuss the top 3 impactful freshmen of the year coming into 2020. So be looking out for that. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. This is Nate Dogg signing off.